good afternoon, wherever it is you are joining from. Can you see my screen, please? All right, thank you. And today I'll be looking at this topic, opportunities and strategies for exporters in crisis situation. And indeed, it is opportunity. Even in crisis situation, the only challenge is that the people that are able to take advantage of those opportunities are those that are ready. And I think that's where we can take a cue from as a nation and as a people, considering really opportunities that this world creates. First, some people to be able to do trade, and they really could make that happen because they were prepared. You know, someone said, when opportunity meets preparation, the person is said to be lucky. But it's really not lucky, only that he was positioned to take advantage of that opportunity. I have about 6 or 7 stuff to talk about: preamble, the products, the picture at present, the potential opportunity, the prospect that can take advantage of it, and how we can prepare some other time as solution. COVID involved our world, and it was a big challenge for the world. And of course, it disrupted trade so badly. This is the impact of COVID on our world. The red dot you're seeing was sometimes April, May last year, but precisely on April 20, 2020, oil price went below zero, reported by BBC, and was on Bloomberg website. Why? Because the oil vessel became storage. The oil vessel became storage, storing oil because nobody was buying. People were willing to give up the oil, keep the platform running. And those red dots were vessels in different parts of the world. And the impact still extends till last year, and people were still having it because of a lot of backlog. But you know, in that challenge, China made more money trading in COVID. So even though many countries have declined in trade, like Nigeria, for example, Nigeria declined from about $62.5 billion to about $30-something billion. A very sharp decline, of course, because of oil. But countries like China were having increased growth in trade. As a matter of fact, India celebrates $400 billion in trade within a year. And there was COVID. And the world was just recovering. But this country were ready. So it's very important for us to take a cue from what is happening and the fact that even though there was COVID, it was a challenge for the world, people benefit from it. Russia and Ukraine is having big issue right now, disrupting trade in the world. But some countries are able to fill the gap. Well positioned to fill the gap, being left out by the challenge. Sanction on Russia on one hand, disruption of production and shipment and supply chain in Ukraine on the other hand. So let's look at some of the products that are really affected. It's a big challenge in the world right now because of the issue between Russia and Ukraine, but let's take a cue at Russia. In 2019, just imagine what Russia alone is exporting is almost equal to what the whole of Africa is exporting, because African export is about 400-something billion. And China is doing 416 billion in 2019. And a good chunk of that is crude oil. Almost 30% crude oil, which is why, of course, if China is supplying this volume, because if you look at it really, total trade of crude oil is hovering between $700, $800, and $900 billion. And a country, 30% is about 120. At about 416, 30%, about 120 billion. That's a lot of supply gap that China is leaving out, which is why the world is the West is even very careful in the kind of sanction they place on Russia, even reluctant to implement some, because of the very important position China occupied. And that's a lesson for me, really, that even though a country might be perceived to do something the world is against, but it's difficult for the world to rise against such a country because of the value and the impact of the value of that country in the world. And China leading as an example. So crude oil, about 30%. Refined petroleum, about 70% of the 416 billion. Then petrol gas, 6.55%. Coal briquette, 4.34%. By the way, coal briquette is made from organic matter, sawdust, and the like. Africa is importing billions of dollars of this product, and China is doing this much. And gold, platinum, and many other products that China is doing. And look at wheat supply also of Russia alone. Now, Ukraine, on the other hand, even though a smaller country compared to Russia, even though a smaller country compared in their output, but some strategic and important products also in the world are coming from this country, Ukraine. So imagine Ukraine, $54 billion. Nigeria export, the highest in recent time, is 62.5. Ukraine is now up to 50 million people, but Ukraine is doing $54 billion, being a major supplier in terms of corn, in terms of wheat, in terms of seed oil like sunflower oil, even iron ore. And a number of these products, particularly wheat and corn, is a big deal in our world today. Now, this country is having issue, and enough because of the impact of this country alone. And that speaks volume as far as trade is concerned, sincerely. You know, before we might be looking at trade as just, a means of economic growth, but I think trade also is capable of giving countries soft power, such that it becomes difficult, even if you're going to deal with those countries, because of the value they are creating and the impact of the value they are creating in our world. $54.5 billion, the total export of this country in 2019, and of course the highest in recent time, just before COVID. So let's look at the picture. How has all this impacted the world? This challenge between Russia and Ukraine has impacted the world. What is the volume of contribution of this country as far as our world is concerned? Look at this. According to UNCTAD, ton. Can you see Russia and Ukraine contribution? Russia, and this is the share of global trade in this selected product. Ton, 14%, majority coming from Ukraine. Koza seed, 16%, majority coming from Ukraine. Even barley, 23%, majority or more coming from Russia. Wheat, 27%, majority coming from Russia. And sunflower seed oil, 53%, more than half of global supply. And with majority coming from Ukraine. Ukraine might be a small country, or appear to be a small country, but this country contribution to the world is enormous, as you can see in this data. Let's look further. This is talking about the dependence on agri-food from Russian Federation and Ukraine. Look at Turkey. Turkey is dependent on Ukraine. 22% of share of import of selected commodities and 3% from Ukraine. These two countries, even China is not spared, heavily depending on Ukraine in terms of agri-food commodities. 17% of the total import they do, and 5.6% from China, and from Russia rather. Egypt, 7.5% from Ukraine, and of course, 15.1% of the total agri-food commodity imported by Egypt from Russia. You can begin to see the reason why we are having some of the crises we are having in the world, even in the oil sector. I mean, we are not feeling a lot in petrol because of subsidy, but people that are producing using diesel to drive their factory, they're not finding it funny. I have the supplier, the lady that supplied the product I export to the UK, and he was calling me and he was lamenting the impact. You know, sometimes our world is so fully integrated that even though an issue is happening in a particular part of the world, but almost every other part of the world is feeling the impact. You know, because there is so much high level of intercontinental value chain today in our world. Imagine this scenario. A lead oil produced from Ishiagu in Ebonyi State can be exported to China to produce lead ingot. And that lead ingot can be exported to Europe to produce battery. That battery can be exported to the US and put in Ford car or in GM car. And that car can come back to Nigeria. Any disruption in that process affect everybody in the chain. So you see a situation in which an issue is happening in a country like Russia. And this is also very important. You know, I learned another lesson during the COVID situation. I compare the impact of COVID on the world and a pandemic or epidemic like COVID and the one we experienced in Africa, the Ebola virus. And I learned a big lesson that Africa is nowhere yet in the world. We are, in the scheme of things, we can be discounted to a large extent. Can you imagine with Ebola ravaging many parts of Africa? The world is moving on. The impact is so little. But COVID started from China. China contributing immensely to trade in the world. The contribution of Africa is about 2.5, 2.6%. The contribution of EU is about 30% to the world trade. And that also of Asia, over 20%. These are massive trade. China, over $2 trillion. US, about $1.6, $1.7 trillion in export. So anything happening in this country have a very serious ripple effect. In fact, as we are maintaining social distance from ourselves, a lot of companies maintain business distancing from China, trying to set up some of their factories in Southeast Asia, in India, also in Vietnam, in Thailand, in Malaysia, so that they avoid what happened in China to affect them again because of the impact. These two countries, Turkey is affected, China is affected, Egypt is affected, India is affected, Netherlands is affected, Thailand is affected, Bangladesh is affected, Indonesia is affected, Pakistan is affected, Germany is affected, Republic of Korea, Sudan, Italy, Vietnam, Azerbaijan, Tunisia, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, and United Kingdom, heavily dependent on Russia and Ukraine. What is the dependence of Africa and least developed countries on these two countries also? In terms of the share of wheat import, can you see Somalia with a huge dependence on Ukraine, almost 70% of wheat import, and the remaining from Russia. Same for Benin Republic. Benin depends 100% on Russia for wheat import. Lao People Republic, about 70% on Russia, 30% on Ukraine. Egypt, about 60% on Russia and about 20% on Ukraine. And you can see the level of dependence of different countries in the world affected because two countries have issues. So the world is interested in ensuring this issue is resolved. Why? This country cannot be discounted because of their contribution to trade in the world by virtue of their level of productivity. Let's go to gas. Which European country depend on Russia for gas? This is amazing. Imagine the dependent on gas. Latvia, Finland, countries like Moldova, Bosnia, North Macedonia, 100%. Finland, 94%. Latvia, 93%. Bulgaria, 77%. Germany, 49%. Italy, 46%. Poland, 40%. France, 24%. You see the reason why even putting a sanction on Russia it was done with a lot of caution and seemed a bit selective. Why? So that we, in trying to paralyze the economy, we also don't injure ourselves because of this high level of dependence. And this is making countries that are prepared, countries that have reserve, like India. India is one of the largest producers of wheat in the world, but India is not a major exporter. But India have 24 million tons of reserve. India is trying to meet that supply gap. US also is trying to meet the gas supply gap supplying to Europe, but they could only do that because they were prepared. A very important lesson for us in Africa, actually. Fear over Russia, according to the conversation.com, fear over Russia's huge fossil fuel export being interrupted has led to global oil and gas price hiking. Oil tanker freight rates have tripled as ship owners weigh the risk of being stuck with cargo they cannot offload. So far, though there has been no significant reduction in Russia exports, the US and UK and Australia are banning all imports of Russian oil. But these are not significant markets. More important is what European Union nations do. Given their high dependence on Russian oil and gas, so far the EU has imposed financial sanctions on Russian energy producers while still buying their products. Moving away from Russian oil is not easy. Russia has a 12% global share. The global refinery are fine-tuned to work with specific type of oil found in specific region. So you can't just import from just anywhere. Replacing Russian gas, according to the conversation.com, is even more challenging. The European Union may take more than 40% of its gas imports from Russia. Russia is the third largest producer and third exporter of crude oil. Russia exports nearly 5 million barrels of crude oil per day. Russia export is about 410 billion and 30% of crude oil and 60% petroleum. Oil price reached 8-year high at a price of over $100 per barrel. Ukraine is among the top 5 exporters of corn in the world, and this has been affected by the war. Ukraine and Russia account for 19% of corn supply. 19% of corn supply in the world. Ukraine and Russia account for 90% of corn supply in the world. Russia is the largest exporter of wheat, and they account for about 24% of wheat export in the world. Ukraine is 5th largest exporter of wheat, and they account for about 9% of wheat export in the world. Ukraine and Russia account for 33%. Can you imagine? Two countries account for 33% of a major commodity used for practically most things that we produce every day. Wheat for different flours. Turkey, Egypt, Sudan, our own Nigeria, Bangladesh will be worse hit, being major wheat importer from Russia. Now, let's now look at the potential. Now, the potential market in terms of those that will be able, this demand. What is the demand for crude oil, for example? $992 billion. Now it's been impacted. The people that are able to produce are the ones that will meet this demand. With the China being affected, the people that will be able to meet the supply gap of these 992 billion are those that have reserve. That those that are able to increase their production volume, having a very agile system that can respond to need within a very short time. Crude, $992 billion. How about gas? $303 billion. This also been affected. $303 billion market. Let's look at another one. Refined petroleum, $710 billion. Huge opportunity, I must say, for us. But the question is, how prepared are we? This is a challenge. A challenge that, look, when you say someone is lucky, like we use. You can say now that India is lucky, but India have reserve that they can use to meet the supply gap and increase their export and even expand their production. And maybe afterwards, they will retain the position of being a lead exporter of wheat because they are taking advantage of the situation that they were well prepared for ahead of time. Coal brigade, another product affected, $95.2 billion market. Another product affected, a major one, for example, wheat, $46.4 billion. Do you notice that Nigeria is importing 3.29% of the wheat import in the world? 46.4 billion. The next one is corn. Can you imagine the market for corn? Sometimes, in Nigeria, I know the reason why probably the custom of federal government is not allowing us to export corn is on the prohibition list, maybe because for production locally. I think it should be an opportunity for us to really increase our production of corn. Sesame seed, ginger, gum arabic, cocoa, cashew. If you add the market size together, it's not up to 20 billion. Cocoa is the largest, 9-point-something billion. Cocoa is the largest, 9-point-something billion. Soya beans is about $60 billion market. Corn is about $37 billion market. So indeed, if we are looking for forex, I think there are some other products we need to consider. I don't think there should be ban on corn. I know we probably are not producing enough, maybe with the RT200 effects of CBN and the effort being made by the NEPC, we're able to increase the production of this and begin to also export it because it's a large foreign exchange earner, than ginger, than cashew, than cocoa, cocoa that seems to be highest, and even all the other commodities. Our major agri-commodity exports in Nigeria, if you put them together, they are not up to $20 billion market size. Corn alone is 36, and soya beans is times 2 of this. Let's take out others. Seed oil, like sesame seed. Look at the total market size of sesame seed, 11.7 billion. Imported seed oil, that's oil produced for sesame seed and other seed. Now, as I round up, there are prospects, people that are able to take opportunity of this. Who are those that are able to take opportunity of this? Of course, people who are the largest producer of this product. For example, look at this product. Wheat, leading producer globally, EU combined, 138 million metric tons. China, 136, followed by India, 109. Even though Russia and Ukraine are major exporters because they don't have a lot of population, China is using locally, India is using locally, EU is using locally. So among the top producers, the people that will export are the people with smaller population but with large volume compared to their population. And that's where Russia and Ukraine is coming into the picture. And like I said earlier, India is taking advantage of this because they produce more, but they don't export as much. I think they're exporting just about 1% of wheat export in the world. But now they are taking advantage of seeing how to take over this market. And of course, they need to do a lot of things, actually, in terms of production volume, but more in terms of quality also, to be able to meet the standard that the world wants. Let's look at corn. For corn, look at the distribution of corn. Between 2019 and 2020, United States being a major producer, 31%. Followed by China, 23%. Followed by Brazil, 9%. These are the people that can easily respond to fill these gaps. Why? They have large capacity and they are producing a lot. This speaks to the fact that we really need to increase our production volume, which is some of the things I'm talking about towards the end in terms of area of investment that Nigeria really needs to work on. Let's look at another product, sunflower oil. You can see that 17.5 million metric tons in Ukraine. Russia, 15.5 million metric tons. European Union, 10.4. So the people that will take advantage of this are the European Union, Argentina, Turkey, and a host of other countries that don't produce as much. Then let's look at this. World biggest producer of gas. Russia. Nigeria is down. Even though we are flaring a lot of gases. And we could take advantage of this. US, and that's why US is trying to help EU to cover the supply gap that will be left out because of the sanction currently on Russia. Iran, in fact, EU is going to talk to Qatar, even though report Abiy, they have concern with their human rights issues and the way they treat people and the way the workers that are used in producing this thing. In spite of that challenge, they have to go and talk to Qatar. I even heard their discussion also with Venezuela. I mean, so many things are happening in our world because of productivity of some nations and their contribution to the world in terms of production. So from Russia to Iran, Canada, Qatar, China, Australia, Norway, Saudi Arabia, Algeria, Indonesia, Malaysia, top producer of gas in the world, who will be able to meet the gap that will be left behind because of Russia. India, like I said earlier, has about 24 million ton reserve of wheat and is considering meeting shortage in supply and taking over as major supplier in that market. US is considering supply of gas to EU to meet the supply coming from Russia because they have reserve. EU also is reaching out to Middle East for gas and oil because these countries have a lot of reserve. As a roundup, what then do we need to do? We need a lot of investment, ladies and gentlemen, in projects, infrastructure. For example, for our commodities, there was a time I explored exporting iron ore. And I realized the cost of moving iron ore and coal from the mine to the port is more than the cost of the goods. It's more than the cost of the goods. Of course, many countries have this product and we are not competitive because if we were to move by rail, we would have significantly dropped the price because these are bulk shipping products. If you want to ship this product, you have to ship it in bulk. And then, of course, you need to leverage on the cheap means of transport to be profitable. Of course, we need also more investment in power. That needs no explanation. But in volume of production, I think it's a serious area of investment to grow our volume, but more importantly, to also be able to have a lot of storage so that we can respond to issues like this and earn a lot of forest from this supply gap. But if we are producing, we need to invest a lot in promotion to be able to get the world to know exactly what we are capable of doing. And more importantly, in our people, in terms of their skill proficiency, and of course, the people driving that business. As a roundup, I would like to say, if you want to diversify our economy, if you want to grow our GDP, if you want to create employment, if you want to boost our foreign reserve, if you want to increase value of naira and other currency of the world, then we must prepare to aggressively take advantage of export business body from around the world. Thank you very much.